That is the largest transfer ever. Kevin Cork is in Martha's Vineyard, where the president is vacationing. Kevin, who are these detainees?
Well, I have to tell you, let's be honest here, Stuart. The fact that they're releasing Gitmo detainees is nothing new. But as you pointed out, I think perfectly, it's the number of detainees that's not only raising eyebrows, it's quite frankly raising the ire of many lawmakers on Capitol Hill. In all, 15. Now, 12 of them are actually from Yemen. Another 3 are from Afghanistan. But that's not perhaps the most important part of this. Perhaps the most important part of this story is the fact that we're talking about al-Qaeda-trained men who are caught on the battlefield. A great many of them not only caught on the battlefield fighting against the coalition for quite some time, a great many of them were weapons trained by al-Qaeda. Now, let me show you some numbers. I think the folks at home will find this very instructive and very valuable as well. Now, we've talked a great deal about the Obama administration's decision to try to, if not close Gitmo, at least they can empty it and drive down the numbers there. And the numbers are quite frankly startling. If you go back to when the president took office, there were 245 detainees. That number dwindled down to 166 in 2013. Today, it's down to just 61, and that's driven up the cost for taxpayers more than $7 million per prisoner annually spent on keeping open that prison. But there, as you can imagine, concerns that these detainees, quite frankly, Stuart, could get back out there and face Americans on the battlefield. And I want to share with you some of what some people are talking about. Now, Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mike McCall, Republican, of course, from the great state of Texas, has this to say. He says, listen, at least a third of the inmates released from Gitmo are suspected of returning to the fight, and that is a heavy-duty number, as you see right there from Mike McCall. Now, the White House, of course, is also weighing in. They say, listen, we implemented a rigorous review process at the beginning of the administration and transferred detainees in a manner that protects our national security and is consistent with our humane treatment policy. Humane treatment policy, that's sort of code for we feel like it's immoral to keep open the prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. That's the administration's take on all this. As you can well imagine, lawmakers and political candidates are weighing in as well, including one Mr. Donald Trump, who is calling it the Clinton-Obama plan to empty Gitmo. He says that threatens national security by allowing terrorists to be released. This is a storyline that we'll continue to watch very carefully, Stuart, as well, because we are told by sources that this number will be down to below 30 before the president leaves office in January, if, of course, they have their way. Stuart?
Kevin Cork, thank you very much indeed, Kevin. By the way, it was the largest release of detainees in this administration. Now, at the same time the administration announced the release of these detainees, Vice President Joe Biden was slamming Donald Trump as Tony Schaefer. Tony, what do you make of this? Simultaneously, there is the release of 15 detainees, Joe Biden saying that Donald Trump makes our troops more in harm's way.
Right. If I didn't know better, I would think this is a bad Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, where you look at the extremes and you think it's a joke. This is a joke. Joe Biden's comments are completely insane. Stu, I mean, Reagan was told by staff, I was talking to Bud McFarlane, his national security advisor, about this a few weeks ago, when Reagan wanted to say, tear down this wall, Mr. Gorbachev, and people went nuts saying, oh my God, you know, you're going to endanger. Sometimes you got to figure out what the clear verbiage is to use and use it. So I think when you take the verbiage that Vice President Biden uses and look at the administration's actions, they're completely incongruent. And as Kevin said in the run-up to this, Stu, over one-third of the people who have been released from Gitmo have returned to combat against us and our allies. Okay. And let's remember, these last ones left are the worst of the worst. To use the process the way they have retreated on releasing the worst until the very last.
Well, do you dismiss the argument that it's costing $7 million per year per detainee, which is an awful lot of money?
I dismiss the fact that we're spending so much money when we don't need to. Look, during World War II, when we captured German spies here on U.S. soil, essentially terrorists, they were tried, convicted, and most were put to death. Stu, most of these people that are being held have blood on their hands. A lot of these folks have either killed people of the Muslim faith, which I would think would be a major issue to hold them accountable for, or more importantly, they picked up arms and killed our own troops during the Afghanistan invasion. So let me ask you the question, why did we even make the effort to hold them if we're not going to hold them accountable. So this is one of the problems I have with both this administration and, frankly, the Bush administration. No one actually tried anybody through the entire process of holding these people for all that money.
Tony, I must change course for a second.
Sure.
We have reports that Russia has started airstrikes against Syria using Iranian air bases, or an Iranian air base.
Right.
Have we been run out of the Middle East completely?
We have. Right here on this show, and I think with you on your show, we've talked about the fact that we at the London Center have predicted the rise of what we call the Damascus Pact. Syria, Iran, Russia, and some of the elements therein becoming essentially the modern-day version of the Warsaw Pact of the Cold War. And yeah, Stu, they're working on running us out of the Middle East, and this administration is letting it happen. And let me be very, very clear on this. Iranians are not only after the space, they're going into Yemen, they're going into other areas that have traditionally not been influenced by their version of the Islamic faith. And what we see here is a major expansion of Iranian influence, which nobody is holding back, and the Russians are encouraging by the fact that the more that the Iranians go, the more the Russians can go with them, and they see it a benefit.
Tony Shaffer, as always, thanks for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.